Rewind to when you was 18 years old and tell us, where has a big part of your life begun?
I went to travel there for 3 months and ended up to have a life-saving operation. They said that they needed to do surgery, but there was a 96% chance of HIV. There was no sterile equipment, and the doctor said to my friend, because I was unconscious, never done this surgery before, but I'm prepared to give it a go. And when we came out, some of the people in the queue, who were children, had died while waiting. I just remember looking at my skin and being like, this can't be real. Even from being a kid, if you ask anyone at school how was I wasn't the coolest, but I was friends with everybody, and if there was one person that was victimised at school, I was there. And I'm not confrontational at all, standing up being like, no, you can't do that, it's not fair. That is the honest truth. Everyone's just got to take an initial step forward, and once you've done that, things will align and fall into place. And maybe it's not what you originally thought it was going to be, it probably will be better, but we're so afraid of taking that step, and some people never do.
Some people build charities, but today's guest, Sarah Brooks, built a movement sparked by survival. After a life-altering illness, brain injury, a coma, and being held at knife point, Sarah didn't shrink from the world. She rose, stronger, louder, and more determined to change it. With over 15 years in the charity sector and a psychology background, Sarah founded the Sparkle Foundation, an international non-profit bringing health, education, and empowerment to vulnerable communities across Malawi and beyond. She's a TEDx speaker, one of the UK's top charity CEOs, and the kind of leader who turns pressure into purpose daily. From stress to service, breakdown to breakthrough, Sarah Brooks' story is one of grit, growth, and giving back. And today, thanks to our sponsor at Meals on Me, who are keeping our listeners well with their flavourful, fulfilling, fuss-free meal deliveries, we go beyond the boardrooms and charity spotlights to explore the recovery, resilience, and radical empathy driving real change needs. This is Sarah Brooke, resilient, purpose-led, and sparked by name and sparked by nature.
Sarah, thank you so much for being here. I'm very excited to sit down and have this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me.
I actually get probably more excited about working with and talking to somebody like yourself than I would like somebody that's like super famous and people get starstruck. I feel a bit like that when I get to speak to people like you who have actually been really leading the charge in so many ways, and we'll dive into all of that. But first of all, rewind to when you was 18 years old and tell us, like, where has a big part of your life begun?
I can act it out. Doing that literally changed my life. Obviously, I pointed at a map and my finger landed on Malawi, and that was that. I went to travel there for 3 months and ended up having to have a life-saving operation. I mean, I was rushed to the hospital. They said that they needed to do a surgery, but there was a 96% chance of HIV. There was no sterile equipment, and the doctor said to my friend, because I was unconscious, never done this surgery before, but I'm prepared to give it a go. You can only imagine. He was like, right, okay, what's the other choice? And he says, go to a private hospital, private being it had a bed, 2 hours away, but risk of dying en route. And he made that decision and said, no, I'd rather try and find a car to take her there. He flagged down a vehicle, apparently put me on the back of it. Off I went to the hospital, had the surgery, and he came to visit me and said, Sarah, when we're at the local hospital, over 300 people waiting in the queue to see that one doctor, and when they saw you, because of the colour of your skin, you were prioritised to be seen first, and you were with that doctor for 2.5 hours, and when we came out, some of the people in the queue, who were children, had died while waiting. And I mean, I just remember looking at my skin and being like, this can't be real. This cannot be happening. And still at 18, I was a relatively young 18-year-old in my mind. I was like, I just couldn't comprehend it. And I was like, I have to do something to help. I have to do something to help. And obviously I called my parents and was like, I'm alive. You're not going to believe what's happened. They're like, get home. And I was like, home? No, I'm now doing something to help. And that's where it started. And here we are now.
I first heard that story and I was like crying immediately. So like my goal with this podcast is not cry, which is funny because we were talking about podcast sponsors earlier and you were talking about being sponsored by tissues because your story of stuff that evokes a lot of emotion. What is it about you that decided in that moment you wanted to actually step into the arena and actually lead and make a difference? Because there'll be a lot of other people 18 or older and perhaps more mature than 18 that wouldn't do that.
I'd love to know what it was that could bottle it up and sell it, because I'd be a billionaire right now. But I've just had this inner drive and this real sense of I need things to be different, and I want to be a part of that change, even from being a kid. Like, if you asked anyone at school, how was I wasn't the coolest, but I was friends with everybody. And if there was one person that was victimized at school, I was there. And I'm not confrontational at all, standing up, being like, no, you can't do that. It's not fair. We've got to be on the right side of being equal. And I think that carried all of its way through with Malawi, and having realized that I'd been saved for others, it just changes your perspective, and then your determination. And probably what a million people would say to you, which I had hundreds say, don't do it, you'll never make a change. It's like when people become vegetarians saying, oh, you're not going to make the impact. I kept having the same thing. Oh, you'll never be able to change the charity sector, you'll never be able to change even Malawi, you'll never be able to change a community. And the more people that kept telling me, never know, the more I was like, watch me. And that fire just kept going and going, and maybe at times went too far one way because I was out to prove a point as a bit of a martyr, but I managed over the years to get the middle ground. And yeah, the same people that told me no, and now like, how did you do it? Come on our podcast and tell us all about it. And I'm like, no problem.
Dude, that was just in my DNA. It's interesting because I saw you sat down and had a conversation. Was it, I don't know if it was sort of like an interview per se, but with your parents?
Yeah.
And was it your dad that was saying that actually, no, she's always been like this, and like always the kid that went first, always the one that encouraged others to then do it through your example?
Exactly. I think having brothers, and there was a 6 and 7 year age gap. I've
Yeah.
come from a very sporty family. I just used to be that kid that was in the goals at home, and you hear the stories and like, did that really happen? So no, I vividly remember having footballs kicked at me, like my head, my stomach, everywhere. And rather than crying, I was like, I'm going to do this. There was a grit, I guess, inside me. And I always remember the story. My brothers, we played table tennis a lot as a family. We had it in the garden at home and in the garage. And I always used to go and knock on the door and be like, can I play? And my brothers would be like, no, you're ridiculous. You're like too small. So I put the table tennis up in half, and every day after school I'd go and practice. And then eventually, I think I was maybe 8, my dad said, go on, let her have a go. And I held my own, and they were like, what? And I was like, yeah. And I think that determination was just in me out to prove a point, and nice. Sparkle has followed suit, clearly. I've
just got this picture of on Forrest Gump where he's got the table. It's like, this is like the fight of your life. Well, that grit has obviously transferred into what you've built now with Sparkle Foundation. What has that grit done to you as a person, as a human? not the Sarah that's on all the podcasts and doing your TED Talks and showcasing all the good work you do, which is amazing. But like, what about you behind the scenes? Like, what impact has all this had on you?
It's nearly killed me 7 times, being completely honest. I've been defibbed back to life once. I've had a traumatic brain injury that left me in a coma. I've had 4 anaphylactic shocks. One of which an airplane had to land in a different airport. The guests weren't best pleased with me. And I've been run over. I also, in a view to try and get some rest and recovery, went on holiday to Mauritius with my family. And, everyone was saying you just need to chill out. And I thought, brilliant, here I am chilling out on my sun lounger. And a coconut fell from a tree and knocked me out. That was me. I don't know, it's like 1 in 1 million chance of it happening. So yeah, it's been my health has probably suffered the most in the journey, being honest. And that's my physical health I'm telling you about. Yeah. From a psychological, mental health perspective, I've very much been of the something's happened, and then the next day something else has happened, and the next day, so processing didn't really happen actually until I had the head injury in 2017, and it took me nearly a year to recover. I had to learn to walk, talk, everything else in between again. And it's almost like I came back to life because I was announced dead at Zomba Central Hospital. It was just that they didn't have the machinery to see that I was still alive. And when I came out of this induced coma, I came back a different person, and it's almost like I was having to process all the traumas that I'd been through again, and they'd all come to the surface. And as painful as that was, it was probably actually very wise to have to go through it now, because maybe it would have just reared its head at another point. But But it's been massive. I think I never probably give it enough credit for how much it's impacted my life. Yes, in a positive way. It's amazing being able to change the amount of lives that we've been able to do. But I am a human being behind all this. I'm just like anybody else. It hurts, I feel. And being put on a pedestal your whole life of being this inspiration, when honestly sometimes I don't feel like, I just want to be normal. I want to go to the shops and not be stopped by mummy, there's Sparkle. And it's great, and I love the kids for doing it. But just to be able to go, yeah, actually, I don't need to spend every single day sharing my story 6-7 times a day, because first 2 questions anyone asks you, what's your name? What do you do? The minute I've said what I do, we're there half an hour, 1 hour, and that's great. But when I'm sharing my story, I'm also reliving the trauma that my body's gone through, both mentally and physically. And I didn't really, up until the head injury and just after, realise what that was doing to my body. And I think I've now had to be much more kinder to myself, to actually go, you know what, you're talking about 7 near-death experiences, like that's an everyday occurrence. That's a lot. That is a lot. That's not what everyone goes through. And that's not also to say all the other things that we've dealt with. I've 6 children have died at Sparkle, and I was giving CPR and someone's parent was shouting at me saying please, you've got to do something to help, please. And I'm not a doctor. I tried my best. But did I ever process what that looked like? Probably not. And I always think doctors, the analogy, doctors are trained, as sad as it is, but how to deal with death. In the charity sector, we're not, and yet we're on the front line and we learn our own coping mechanisms. So yeah, it's made a version of me that is unique, let's put it that way, in the most pragmatic way possible.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, because I think it's so easy for people to look from the outside, isn't it, and see, okay, well, you've done this visionary movement, really, that you've created with Sparkle Foundation, and all of the other work you do as an ESG consultant as well, working with different organisations, and it'd be too easy to be under the illusion you've just got it all figured out and you're good to go, right? And a lot of people that are listening to this, I really want to burst the bubble that exists, the fact that we have to have it all figured out and that we have to get to our breaking point to then recognise, oh, okay, this is what I'm here for, and then we make a difference. Often these things are working in parallel all of the time. And I think media has played a big part in us kind of creating that viewpoint, but we need to burst the bubble. Why do you think it's so important for us to burst that bubble?
Otherwise we'll never start. That is the honest truth. Everyone's just got to take an initial step forward, and once you've done that, things will align and fall into place. And maybe it's not what you originally thought it was going to be. It probably will be better, but we're so afraid of taking that step, and some people never do. And the amount of people that I go and speak to that say, oh, I've been thinking for ages, I want to do something to help, I just don't know how. And I understand, but then at the same time, I'm like, it's so easy. There's so many organisations, just reach out. Someone will come back to you and we can do it. And that's what I think. I said, stop putting limitations in your own mind, take the step, and then make the opinion if nothing actually comes of it. But to be honest, at Sparkle, we've not had one person that's come, and we've not been able to find a way that they can make an impact. So I'm prepared for people to challenge me on that one if they want.
I listened to, obviously, your TED talk that you did. It was 8 years ago now.
Ooh, yeah. Not my finest look.
But it's what you were saying was really, really impactful, right? Because you started with a question like, how many people in the room donate, right? And then you've got some strong opinions about how we can help, right? So based on what you know now, 8 years after the TED talk, 10 years now since Sparkle, what do you now know that might be different when it comes to giving back and making an impact? Do you think it's enough for people to just give money? I don't know, I'm trying to probing you here.
Giving money is the easiest thing to do, truthfully. Giving time is the hardest thing to do. But even harder than both of those things is delivering on a promise. And that is the one that I would say is really important. If you are committing to making a difference, then you are making a commitment to help change someone's life. And that is not something we should take for granted. And this isn't something like, should I not go for a brunch? This is you're giving someone hope and a belief. And the amount of times we hear people say, we want to do something and then never do is painful, because it doesn't impact me ultimately. It does because it's like, oh, you had the chance to change someone's life, but I know the child at the other end of this that could have their life changed because of said individual. And I think that's something we really need to work on, because if we applied how we do exercise or how we do with career coaching and pushing ourselves to reach the next promotion to actually how we give back to charity, I think we'll realise that charity we treat as a tick box or a nice to have, rather than actually part of our inner core values to give back. And it's the greatest thing to give, yet we don't look at it in that way or prioritise it.
Why do you think we don't?
Because we've become so emotionally detached from the reality of what's going on. Social media. I remember when I was growing up as a child, like I'd see these awful images, and I'm not saying we disagree completely with putting negative images of any children. It's all about empowerment and everything else in between. But people are turned off from that now. Like if they see pictures and even if they hear about suffering, you only need to look at my social media. I put a post up about dinner at the Burj Khalifa that a sponsor's taken me out, and I put a post of children in Malawi. What's getting the most engagement? The first, not the latter. People don't care enough to take the step. And the second of all, if it's not linked to them directly, then there's this relatability issue that, oh, well, it's happening over there, so I don't really feel obliged to do something. And that's hard, because my stance is we're all human being. And I learned firsthand at 18, the only thing that differentiated me from someone else was the colour of my skin. The reality is, strip it all back, COVID taught us this. There's no difference. It's just geographic lottery that we won, giving us the access to all of these things we get today. And for me as a human being and as a humanitarian, if I've got a voice, I've got to use it. If anyone I meet has the ability to have a voice to make a change, whether it's Malawi, whether it's any other country, it's a duty of care. Because if it was our family and our children, we'd expect someone else to do the same.
So it becomes a responsibility, I think, doesn't it? And it's funny, I was talking about this with somebody else on the podcast, Seb, that we were speaking about earlier. And he was saying that when you go to visit perhaps certain locations and you get exposed to the way that other people live, that does start to help you to relate, then if you come back and do nothing with it, it's just selfish. and I really, really love that, because I get that everybody processes things differently, and I have a lot of compassion for people that are trying to do something and maybe just not quite finding their way yet. But I really believe that it's on us to do something about it. If we don't, who will? That's the question that sits with me a lot.
And I think it's so easy. People think it's really difficult. Like the best meetings I have is I sit with someone for half an hour, have coffee, and say, who do you know? Pass me your phone. Tell me who your friends are. Tell me who your children play with at school. What do their parents do? This company, by the time you've come out of the meeting, you've got me 20 new contacts. All you need to do is introduce me to them. The door's opened and the rest is taken care of, because people want to help. They do. Companies want to help and soon are going to have to help with the way kind of the ESG space is going. So it's that connection piece. And we all talk about it. We see it on social media. Your net worth is your network. Can you imagine if that network could be used in the right way for charity, how many lives we could impact? And I think there's too much competition in the charity sector, and it really pains me, because at the end of the day, we're all striving to do the same thing, to make a difference. So let's come together, do best practice. And I just never want someone to have to go and set up a charity because they felt, something personal had happened to them and there wasn't one out there, because there are charities out there. Let's lose our egos of we need to be the founder, we need to be the person that calls all the shots to this, and actually let's work together, because the impact we could make is much more significant.
Well, that's how we met, right? Is it? So we ended up meeting through somebody that we met through a joint social impact group that we created, or a social values based group that we created, and then we were connected with one of your team, Ilona, who then I was like, okay, who do we know? And then hopefully, like with some of the people that we've introduced, you have paid off. Even now, just like outside waiting for this, it's like somebody's like, oh, can we introduce ourselves? And it's like, who knows where that can go? So I think sometimes people think it needs to be this big grand gesture to make a difference and make an impact, which then is overwhelming, and then we get paralyzed, and then we don't do anything. And if we're already stuck in our own stress, right, in our own day to day, there's this sticking point, right, and there's this ceiling that people get to. What would you say to somebody that might be in that position right now?
I'd honestly just say, just try it. Like, we have a lot of CEOs that are working in really high pressure jobs that come and do some lower impact days at Sparkle. And it takes a bit of to and fro to get them to actually be able to find the time in the diary to come. But this is here in the UAE. They come, they get involved with some of the day-to-day life of Sparkle, and they go away saying, you know, better than any golf day, better than any sort of just rest and recovery, because this is real life, real people, and you've walked away within 6-7 hours of your time being able to make an impact. And I think it's really important that people are aware that they have a skill, whether it's what's in their job title or not, they have something that they can contribute. And rather than getting stuck, as you said, in that mindset that one day, why not today?
Love that. So bringing the conversation back to you, have you felt moments with Sparkle where you've felt stuck and you don't know which way's up?
Yeah. Moments, many stuck. I think the pressure is really hard. Like, you know, I've recently obviously just adopted Rosanna, and I said this to my friend the other day, like, when you're pregnant, you have 9 months to prepare yourself to be having a baby, and you're forced to slow down. When you adopt, it's very different. And for me as Rosanna, like 29th of November, I got pushed a suitcase with Rosanna, who said, "Hello, Mom." And like, my life changed, like in an incredible way, but I wasn't prepared, because I just said yes to something that I knew was the right thing to do. And I came back to Dubai in April expecting that, I don't know, somehow I'd be able to manage between being now a mum and my full-time job at Sparkle. And with everything that's going on in the region and our current fundraising sort of situation, it goes up and down, and majority of our money comes from a gala event that we hold. So it's not like I've got regular income. So you're on that roller coaster. And as charity is seen as like a tick box a lot of times, and a nice to have, majority of my meetings are fitted around when someone has the time, so evenings, and that's or being on the paddle court or doing sport, which is a good thing for me, but trying to then carve out that time when you've also got a daughter at home that needs you to be there has been one of the most challenging points. And I'm still in that where we are now. Like, I finish work at 6 p.m. I need to go home because she's not had the mum that I'm now able to be for her. But I also know that I've got 30,000 children that I need to go and raise money for, that if I don't, we're going to have to make cuts. And that is a very hard place to be, because I can't imagine there's many people in Dubai that are having to make that decision every day, and you're stuck in that. And obviously, naturally, Rosanna is my priority, and my life has changed dramatically from that. But Sparkle is also not a job. This is a calling on my life that I've also been given. And yes, Rosanna is my daughter, but every child that is under our care, I wouldn't treat any differently. Every child that I would meet here that benefits from Sparkle's programs in terms of inspiration or motivation, every child deserves that opportunity that we're giving. And that's really hard. And I'm still navigating, being completely honest, how to do that. Sparkle is growing. I've created something that I never, ever expected in my wildest dreams. It's outgrown me, if I'm being completely honest. My skill set is selling, going around and networking, not the day-to-day operations. But then the same battle we have is that donors want to see where the money's going in terms of project costs, not operational costs. So how sustainable can we honestly be with not having the right people to do the role? So stuck is definitely a place I've found myself a lot, but that inner drive, that inner fire that you spoke about at the start is what always says keep going. There's something else, there's something more, and the ceiling just keeps getting higher and higher. And now I've got a daughter who reminds me every single day, Mom, can you believe what all these children have got here in Dubai? If only we could get that to Malawi. And I'm like, if only, we are going to.
Just to give some context to our listeners that might not know. So you obviously adopted Rosanna from Malawi. You were invited to adopt her by her dad, right?
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
So I've known her since she was 1.5. I mean, we do a vulnerability assessment where we go out into our communities to see which children qualify, and it's an awful thing to say, but the reality is the need is so huge and we have to prioritise the most vulnerable. We came across Rosanna's family, and at 1.5, we said, bring her into the Sparkle programme. At 3, her dad had said, could you take her? I was 30, living on someone's sofa in Dubai, and it just wasn't practical at all. And there was all these stories about Madonna, and I was thinking, I just don't need this. Like, it could be. So I said, no, let me see how I can support the family here to keep her within the house. So I started doing that way. But it was really difficult for the dad. Rosanna's sister's got cerebral palsy and required full-time care, and there just isn't the support system in Malawi for that, so he couldn't work. And in the end, Rosanna was at huge risk of a lot of different challenges in the community, so I had to put her into an orphanage, and she was there up until, and I can't believe it's still August last year. And I went over in March though of that year to visit the house, and I got there and I was like, I will never live with myself or walk away from this situation because I don't know if they'll make it. And I came home, back to Dubai, prayed about it, and I was like, God, please find me a solution, because there's got to be something. Like, I've invested energy, time and love into this family, and this can't be it for her, and it can't be it for the sister. And I was playing paddle, and one of our school partners turned around to me and said, what do you think about sponsoring one of your children to come to Dubai? And I was like, you're joking. I was like, that's an answer to a prayer. Got straight on the phone to the dad and was like, Dad, I was like, what about me being a guardian for Rosanna? I found a school sponsorship here till she's 18. What do you think? And he's like, no. And then it was like, what? And I was like, no. And he's like, no, not guardianship. I was like, oh. And I was trying to like really sell it. And he was like, no, Sarah, you're missing my point. You're the only mother that she's ever known, and you've been with her since she's 1.5. Please, I wanted to have the family that she deserves, and I wanted to have the opportunity. And in true Sarah Brook style, I said, yes, of course. Of course. Not even looking at the paperwork, not even knowing the ins and outs of what it actually takes to adopt a child in the UAE specifically. And yeah, I rang my parents and said, just want to let you know that I'm adopting a daughter from Malawi. And my dad was like, sorry, come again. I was like, yeah, you've heard me. He was like, have you thought about this? I said, it's happening. And that's it. And 3 months later, I was in Malawi, and yeah, here we are now.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, that just gives me goosebumps. It really does. So even in that moment, right, you were stuck, and you turned to your faith.
Yeah.
Now you're in this situation that you just described, like you're trying to manage it all essentially. Like, what helps you when you are feeling stuck?
I think faith is foremost. I don't actually know, and it's not just specific to my religion. Everyone's got something that they go to and they feel that there's got to be more than this. And for me, my life trajectory doesn't make sense. None of it does. Literally, I shouldn't be sat here talking to you now. I've gone through so many different things. Sparkle also shouldn't be where it is today, but something keeps happening. And it's happened so many times now that it's not going to stop happening. I know that if I keep doing the right thing, if you keep putting the right ingredients in, you're going to get the right output. Yes, it's taken way longer than I expected. You know, I thought I was had world domination by now, but it's obviously a lot harder than you realize getting into it. And I think that's where the reality has been for me, is that it's not always easy to find the time for the things that actually make me feel as an individual better, because there's a lot of guilt, and it's not necessarily the right thing. There's a lot of guilt now associated with, well, can I just go and play sport, or can I just go and watch a movie and unwind? Because that constant kind of circle in my head of, I've not made enough money, or we could make more money, or what about this opportunity, or what about doing this now with Rosanna, or actually for all the years I missed out having friends because I was living in Malawi, now I should go out and they're having babies, go and visit them. And it ends up being this spiraling list that there's never enough time in the day to find the things that I want to do. That, if I'm being completely honest with you, at 35, who Sarah is behind Sparkle is a big question mark for me, because I don't actually know what I really enjoy doing, because I've never really put myself first to know what is it I would like to do. And it's an ongoing joke in my family, because they're like, well, do you want Chinese or Indian when it comes to takeaway? And I'm like, I don't know, I'll have whatever you want. Like, no, but make a decision. I'm like, but honestly, I'll be happier knowing that you're having a meal that you enjoy. So I'm easy. But that is also very frustrating for people that want a decision and want you to make it now. And it's a journey that I'm on myself, because since I was 18, I've known no different. And it's hard.
I can imagine. Like, I mean, most people have those questions at some point, right? And the fact that you dove in head first at 18 to what you're doing now, like, it's got to feel a bit strange when you're in those situations in terms of sense of belonging, maybe, because I mean we work obviously with a lot of different leaders, whether they're in the social enterprise space or whether they're in big corporates, and this identity piece is huge, because when we start to lose our sense of identity, that's when we're more susceptible to burnout, right? And we end up spiraling all these different ways. But if you then compound the emotional trauma and the emotional exhaustion you've probably had to cope with and probably still are in some ways, alongside the physical elements as well, like, I mean, that's a lot. Like, that is a lot.
Belonging 100% is a challenge for me, because I say always I'm a chameleon, like I can fit in anywhere. But when you strip that back, is that a long term, like, and that's again back to my faith, it being so important, because it's something at least I can be deep rooted in. Yes, I'm a British citizen and my passport is British, but can I relate a lot to British people? No. I've spent majority of my 20s in Malawi. My heart is in Malawi. I go to Malawi, and the community know me since I was 18. They've watched me grow. I've spent more time in Sogoja village in Malawi than I have in my own village at home for more than 50% of my life. And then the UAE, obviously, I've been a resident here now for so many years. This is where I work. This is where my connections are. So I can kind of adapt to fit into all environments. But people often ask me, so, where do you belong? And not just in terms of where my location is for where I live and work, but also where is that translate into in the industry? Because you can't just shoehorn me into charity, because I have worked in the corporate world before. I'm in boardrooms with CEOs. I'm also in family offices. I'm the only one that looks like me. I'm the only one that also sounds like me. And I'm the only one that's gone through a story similar to what I have. And I think, as difficult as maybe it's sometimes been for me of not knowing where I belong, it's also been the USP, because people also can't place me, and that excites them. And that's why I'm invited to go and be in these rooms, because they know categorically if I'm around, there's going to be a story that comes out of my mouth that they weren't expecting. And that has brought a different dynamic. And most of the CEOs that I speak with, or MDs, they can't explain why they come to me even with all their problems, because they're like, you've just always got a different perspective. And I don't know, it's a gift that I can maybe bring it back down to earth, the real, without making people feel guilty, and remind people what's important, and you're never too late.
It's definitely a gift. I mean, you said it's what, 1 in a million getting hit on the head with a coconut and getting knocked out. You're definitely 1 in a million, that's for sure. But I think the world needs more people like you, and that hopefully rubs off with the people that you work with and the conversations that you have. The question that I always have when I hear examples like yours is, but for how long, right? Without filling up your own cup, as cliche as that sounds. Like, I want to sit with you in 30 years and talk about what's going on 30 years from now, and how you've continued to evolve. Like, and I wouldn't expect you to know what that's going to look like, of course, but if you could perhaps wave a magic wand right now, like, what would the things be that you'd like to know, or would you even like to know anything? Like, or is there anything specific you'd like to happen or to do?
I'd like to pause time, truthfully, just now, to spend the time with Rosanna without having the weight of the work on me, to know that actually all the kids could be just taken care of for a period of time. As I'm 90% of the fundraising comes through me. So if I'm not out and about, money's not coming in. And that's hard, because you can never disconnect from that. So that definitely would be one, to pause time and just be able to spend. I don't think I've ever spent time, not just with her, but with family or with friends, being fully present. Because there's always something. Everyone's a networking opportunity. My mind jumps when anyone talks about, oh, we met such and such. Oh, can they help sparkle? And that has been a constant for me. I think the other one that I probably would be on my health. Truthfully, just, I'm very fortunate to be alive. It doesn't mean that just because I'm alive, I'm not in pain. There's not a lot of the trauma that I've gone through physically, mentally, emotionally, that still sits with me. To have the time to be able to process a lot of that would be great, but wouldn't it be great for everyone? And I think the final thing is that, albeit maybe sometimes it sounds a negative, I probably would have died for the cause, and you wouldn't have been having a conversation with me in 30 years' time if it hadn't been for Rosanna. And that's why I know it was a blessing, because when you have a responsibility that's bigger than yourself, things change. And I may not have stopped for me, but I'll certainly stop for her. And that's the biggest change now. And that's the wand that I didn't intentionally choose to wave, but I now am. And everyone knows around me that it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because I started Sparkle to make a difference to one child's life. And if it's the last thing that I'll do on this earth, or to make sure she's given a better life than I was.
Well, that's powerful, right? So pausing time, can't necessarily stop that one. But fundraising, if there's anyone listening to this episode that wants to get involved somehow, what would they need to do if they were wanting to support you, specifically from a fundraising perspective?
I think just go to our website, sign up. You can become a Changemaker, follow us on social media. I mean, it's 150 dirhams to sponsor a child with education, medical, community and nutrition programs in Malawi. It's not a huge material amount in comparison to what we're spending every day here in Dubai. I think companies also, if you work for a corporate who do impact days, volunteer days, there's only so many beach cleanups, mango tree planting that we can keep doing. We've got other options that can be done, and they can contribute. And we're a registered charity here. So if you're doing a sporting event, a wellness event, we just heard now we introduced someone at festival, every single entry point, there is a way that we can fundraise legally. We just need to know what's happening, and in enough time. That's the big one, is time. The calendar here in Dubai is limited with the heat, with school holidays, with everything else in between, public holidays, Ramadan. If we can't plan, we can't do. And that's really key. But just reach out. We'll always find a way. I think, we're 100% conversion rate of any time someone's contacted us, we can convert something, an idea, into a feasible action. And within 2 to 3 days, you can actually see the impact in Malawi. We're not big enough that you're just a donor in our bank account. You're still able to see where your money is going. You can make a phone call today to our children in Malawi. You can go and visit and you can see, actually, this is what I'm contributing towards.
And I think that plays a huge role, is being able to almost like touch and feel the work in different ways, whether it's through video, going there, hearing the stories, I think is really powerful as well, right? So like you said, we can't always relate to the experience somebody's been through personally, but what we can do is we can have empathy, we can have compassion, and we can connect through that emotional point. And there'll be people listening to this that be like, okay, maybe I can't go and, change the world domination like you're up to, but maybe they can do that one thing, right? And reach out and to do that, because when we get exposed, you can't go back from it. There's certain things you just can't unfeel. And so I can only imagine what that is for you. Like, honestly, like I can't even get my head around it.
I think something's really interesting for me that I've learned is that, yes, we've impacted 30,000 lives in Malawi, but what we've never taken into consideration is the amount of lives we've impacted not in Malawi. And I think certainly here in the UAE, and you mentioned about that sense of belonging, but the people that come through our doors to volunteer time, our youngest volunteer is 4 years old, our eldest is 83. What they're getting back from this experience, also partners that work with us, they can't explain. And it doesn't necessarily mean going on a life-changing trip to Malawi, but here in Dubai, they come in and they're like, wow, we really feel purpose. And we've created this community. No job title, no race, religion is connecting anyone apart from heart. And I don't think there's any other groups similar. Maybe, you can link with your wellness, but ours is genuinely about hearts who want to do good. And if you look at that, like, majority of our volunteers are Palestinian. People will say, well, what's the connection between Palestine and Malawi? There isn't. But they've got a heart that they want to help and they want to make an impact. And rather than say, well, if I can't help at home, I'm not going to help at all. They say, let's help someone. And that's my big message is to everybody, is that just help someone, because that's all it takes. That's start that ripple effect.
Sometimes there's people listening to this podcast as well that are perhaps at that point, like we've said, is that maybe they don't feel like they can, or they're not ready, or not in a position themselves because they're struggling. But sometimes the best way to step out of suffering is to help somebody else. And I mean, just from my own personal experience, I can guarantee you I receive way more than I give, and I do my best to give every moment of every day where possible in different ways, but I get so much in return for it. That's not necessarily the reason why I do it, but it just becomes this almost self-fulfilling prophecy without even realizing it. It's very, very fulfilling, and I think you can always get hooked on that to a certain point, right? Because it's fulfillment, and when we're chasing fulfillment rather than success, then you're playing a whole different game to everybody else. And when we live in a place like UAE, right? Dubai, Abu Dhabi for me, it's like the race to the rich, or the race to the first, the best, and it's just a different game that we're living in. And if you get sucked into that, it can then be quite confusing when it comes to an identity piece. And at some point you've got to choose the direction, right? It's like, what's that point of no return? Are you going to go this way? Are you going to go this way?
I think I was trying to encourage you can actually have both. Like, and I know it sounds a strange mentality, but I've come from a position of privilege. I can't dispute that. Just being white is a big thing, because there's so much that I get access to that people just pretend that it's not the case. It is the case, and it's talking about it and educating people so they're aware. But second of all, even the family that I've come from, and I had it my whole life of like, well, why doesn't your family just, donate and support? And it's like, no, that maybe 10 or 15 children will be able to support, but that's not the case. And it's like, everyone can do something. Oh, well, when you go out to restaurants here in Dubai and you're going for a nice dinner, why are you choosing to do that rather than donating? And it's like, no, I can still live a good life and try and find the ways to do that, and also be able to give back at the same time. So I'd say to people that are thinking, it's not wrong to chase the job title, to chase making the money, because at the end of the day, we need you to be able to do the work that I'm doing. And it's trying to bring those people together. You may not be able to go and volunteer for a week in Malawi. You may not be able to even write me a check for 50,000 dirhams, but you can do something. Even following us on social media, your network then could see our work and it could lead to something else. And I think I agree entirely with you saying, like, there's two different routes to go, but I also want to change the belief system that it shouldn't be mutually beneficial. Like, giving is not completely selfless. If you feel something in return, it's a good thing, because look at partnerships. How much more do partnerships last than what would be of a one-way street? And that's what I'm trying to encourage people with charities, like, give them something back in return, and then it'll last. It's more sustainable. And you'll always find, like, my narrative for the last 10 years has been like, thank you so much. I'm just so grateful, and probably going over the top about like, oh my goodness, you've changed my life. It's so amazing. Now you'll just hear me say, thank you. I'm glad we've been able to help change your life. And people are sometimes like, sorry, come again. And I'm like, yeah, you've heard me, because I'm offering you something that no one else is going to offer you right now. And it will change your life and your family's life by knowing that you've changed someone else's. And science tells us that, psychology tells us that, and everything we read. So I'm hoping that that's going to have a much more bigger impact. And regardless of the cause, to be honest, it's not specific to Sparkle.
So many powerful things in what you just said, but I think like that thing that everything can coexist, I think is so important, because at the same time, like from a practical point of view, like you've said, is like how we can contribute is, and it doesn't have to be either or, it can be and both. But when it comes to being exposed to different types of suffering, depending on whatever that cause is, it's very easy to get sucked into that. We've obviously been in this region, we've been very exposed over recent years. It's been going on for a long time, but with a lot of suffering, and we are very close to perhaps families that are experiencing some really heavy stuff firsthand, and as a result of that, we've got teams supporting them from an emotional, psychological point of view. But then it's too easy to get sucked into only that side of it, and then it can become very detrimental to even support a cause. Now, it's very different if it's family or if you're somebody on the outside that's can support in some way, but it's that it's okay to feel hope. It's okay to laugh about something really silly and trivial on the same day that something really sad is happening, and not because you're laughing at it, but because we're human, right? We have to experience the whole spectrum of emotion. If we go too far one way or too far the other way, we're never going to be of use to anyone. Right?
And that's really so true. Like, it's such a fine balance, because I know my closest friend is Palestinian, and she had literally like a year where she said, I can't go to any events, I can't go to anything because it just doesn't feel right to do it. And in the end, she said to me, and I was trying to push her, saying, yeah, I know, but you've been given access, you've been given opportunity here to be a voice, to do something, at least do something, and don't let it affect your life, because if someone else was in your position, would they stay inside? And in the end, she said, no, it's about finding the balance and the happy medium, and she sort of found that middle ground. But it's not always easy, because you can relate, and when you've got those emotional tenters that are like, it could be me, it could have been me, and I got to do everything I can to change this, that psyche in your mind can also become as I said earlier, a bit like a martyr. And it is a dangerous ground when you start going too far one way. And because you can also then take it all on yourself and end up burnt out completely, which can't get you anywhere, as I've also learned the hard way with that one.
What has helped you find your middle way?
Too many hospital trips to eventually go, an age maturity. Like at 35, you can't be pushing yourself to a point that it's like, your body's screaming at you, slow down, slow down, slow down. It's a bit like the girl who cries wolf. If every time I keep telling people, burnout's coming, I can feel it. And then now my friend's response is, here we go again. This time I thought, no, it's got to be different. Rosanna, she's not going to say, what you're talking about, mum, like sort it out. So the middle ground for me has been being more self-aware, being more intentional, setting boundaries. That was my New Year's resolution this year. Still struggling, still trying. I find it hard to say no because everyone's an opportunity, but I can't always think about that. I've got to actually prioritise quality versus quantity. But you never know. And the nature of work I could be doing, I could be sat with someone that could be the next ticket to $1 million dirhams, or I could be sat with someone that just wants to take a couple of sound bites from me of inspiration to take home to his family. And it's only at the end of it do you ever know. And it's a bit like roulette like that, because and how do you pick? And that's when it comes down to your time. So I've been much more kind of firm about the time, how I spend it, what I do. And sport for me is my outlet completely. Nice. I'm very competitive, and if I can mix the competitive side with also networking the sparkle, it's like win-win. So for me, that's what's kept me kind of in the middle.
Amazing. I love that so much. Before we wrap up, and before we started recording today, we were talking about untold stories. Yeah. And I'm sure you get, obviously, lots of opportunities to speak about different things. And, you've been talking about this for a very long time. You share a lot of similar stories. What's one untold story that you would like to share?
Okay, I'll give you a story that may be relevant to people, is that when things happen in your life, don't necessarily disregard them. So when I was 18, my dream was to be a TV presenter. And I went to go to university, and my dad was like, you need to get a degree. And I was like, no, I just want to go now straight in it, and I want to have a chat show. There was Trisha Goddard, I was saying to you earlier, that it seemed like a good option, and actually Jeremy Kyle as well at the time, who's not such a great person but to be following, but I looked at him and he said he'd done a psychology degree, so I was like, brilliant, I'm going to do a psychology degree. Didn't realise 90% was maths at Exeter, but that's another story. Anyway, I went and did the degree, and then also went through all the media training, and then went to do journalism, and then ended up in the BBC. And my dream was to be on the ground reporting back about like real stories, war-torn stories. And when Sparkle happened, I moved to Dubai, and I ended up obviously doing the corporate job, and that funded Sparkle, and I kind of let go of that dream. And I sit here now doing exactly that job, but for my own organisation. I'm chatting to people on different podcasts. I'm on TV doing different sort of stories. I'm reporting live. I've been and travelled to over 50 countries doing independent audits of charities, doing ESG work. And I think sometimes when we let go of a dream, we think that's it. But what I'd say to people is it may just be not now. And don't ever lose sight of that, because it comes back around. And if you've got an opportunity to invest in yourself, but you may not see the why right now, look beyond that, because it could come back. And that's been a real story for me in my entire life, growing up.
I love that. And I put you on the spot there completely. You didn't know I was going to ask you that, did I? But there's so many things that I could say about the work you're doing, about you. And yes, you're an inspiration, but you hear that all the time. But I think there's so much courage to what you do, and so much bravery. And for you, it might seem like you just do it because you're born to do it. But there's so much courage that you show in your example for taking the risks and for stepping out and leaning into things when you don't know how it's gonna unfold. Every
day is a school day. I have not got myself together. People say, 3 galas in, like it's dubbed the Met Gala of the Middle East. Well, how do you just, know all about events planning? I have no clue. If you get behind the scenes, it's like literally try anything, test it, and failure has been the biggest thing, because we've learned so many lessons. And even now as I sit here, like, yes, everyone says you're so inspiring and amazing and all these things. And does it have an impact on me? truthfully, it's nice to hear, but it's actually what my view of myself is that really matters to me. And I'd had imposter syndrome my whole time. People will say, surely not with everything you've achieved. But it was only after this recent trip coming back from Malawi, 4.5 months, I went, and I'll try not to get too emotional. I went through hell and back. Honestly, it was like the most difficult thing in every single which way. Challenges were faced at me. And I came back to Dubai and had a meeting with my board. A majority of them are CEOs, partners of huge firms. And I remember in board meetings before, I'd go in like so nervous, like, how am I going to say anything? They all know the best. And I went in this time and I was like, you know what? I don't think there's one single person sat around this table or in Dubai that probably would have gone through what I've just had to go through for the last 4.5 months and come out of it still standing, still smiling, and still hopeful that we can still do more. And something changed in my mindset. And I was like, maybe age caught up with me as well, that now I walk into a room and I'm like, maybe I don't look like everyone else. Maybe I haven't got the level of experience or the paycheck or the salary, but I've got something that people haven't got. And the uniqueness now needs to be something to be proud of and not something to run away from. And people have often thought charity is just like, I don't know, like second-class citizens. Oh, it's charity. It's not the same as a business. Oh, it's not, it's just one of those things a bit further down our list of to do. And that's not the reality. Like, I've learned skills that now if I was to go into a business, like I could be something in a corporate sector and earning 5-6 times the salary, but I'm just not driven by that. And I think I've really got to, and I'd encourage that to anybody, like find that inner belief in yourself, because you are different and you can always find it. You're not just a number on an Excel spreadsheet. And we should start celebrating the things that make us unique rather than shying away because we've got to fit into societal norms of what we should or shouldn't be like. And I defy every odd possible in my family, in my community, as a British person, like as a UAE resident, of what I should be doing right now in my life. My house is donated, my car is donated, I'm here under humanitarian purposes. Like every day I wake up not knowing what it may bring. And that isn't for everyone, but I'm embracing it.
You're a true change maker. You're not somebody that's just founded a charity, right? Even that in itself is huge, but you're somebody that's shifting paradigms of what industries can look like, of the way we can think, the way that we feel about the world that we're in. And I think that's something that is truly unique. So I think you're definitely doing that. So I want to recognize your uniqueness and thank you so much for having us. Is there anything else, any final thoughts or last words you want to share?
I just would say on that uniqueness that with AI, I think everybody is going to be panicking about losing their jobs and what it's going to look like. But let's remember what makes us human and remember our identity, because that's the thing that will count. And it's really, really important for everybody to never lose sight of who we are, because a lot of us, our identity has been sat in a job title, and that's about to change. Because as technology grows, takes over, who we are inside is really going to matter.
Yep. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Quick one. As our long-term audience, you will know that our show has grown a lot over the years, and we're thrilled to share with you that we have our very first sponsor. But please don't worry, we're not going to suddenly bombard you with loads of ads. We just want to take a moment to say a big thank you to Meals on Me, who's not only sponsoring us, but they're also fueling us. Meals on Me is a food meal prep and delivery service who understands that wellness isn't about shortcuts. It's about choosing better every single day. They keep it real with fresh, wholesome meals that fit into your life. For me, when I'm rushing through the day and pushing my limits, Meals on Me powers me on. And the best bit that I find is that there's so much variety and every meal tastes amazing, especially compared to others that we've used in the past. So good nutrition underpins our ability to cope with stress and perform at our highest levels. But it's often an area where most of our clients will struggle. So Meals on Me make it easy, effortless, and enjoyable. So check them out today. A special link for you is in the show notes. Thank you to them and thank you to you.